Well, hey, y'all. Um, how are you doing? I hope I hope y'all are doing good because it's Monday and we've arrived again. Um, I am excited to be here because I have finally worked on my setup a bit. And I am a visual learner. And so I like having slides and things I can show people. It's just the teacher in me. So I also have a mic. Hopefully that helps you hear me a little bit better. And I just finally kind of wanted to get myself situated because I think intentionality is really important. And I need to practice things for myself, and hopefully, when I practice things for myself, I can share with you guys what I'm learning from it. And, in the hopes that we all can learn a little bit more how to be just nice humans. That's kind of what I'm going for, is just how to be a nice human. There's a lot of stuff going on in our world. And so I wanted to drink out of my rainbow coffee cup because sometimes you just need a rainbow coffee cup. This morning, I would like for us to talk about growth mindsets. So, um, there are there are ways that we tend to look at things, and we can look at things from certain mindsets. And so, I'd like to talk today a little bit about growth mindsets with regards to difficult situations. Now, I think you'd probably agree with me that we are all experiencing some measure of difficulty or challenges right now, stress, anxiety. And what are the ways that we can really practice feeling good when it feels like the world outside of our front doors is just a hot mess? Because it is. It is a hot mess. And it can absolutely feel that way. How do we feel good? How do we go about living our life? How do we find joy? How do we find peace when there's just so much going on with regard to unrest in our country? Well, that's the practice that I have been working on for a long time in my own personal life. And Brene Brown has been a significant person for me with regard to practicing vulnerability, practicing emotional resilience. So, without further ado, I'm going to just jump right in it. And, uh, and so you're going to see the screen change and you're going to see some slides pop up. All right, so let's talk some growth mindsets, okay? Um, so there's three perspectives that I kind of function out of, and I've been doing this for years. You probably may remember years ago when I had my website, and I had these three perspectives. You can call them three pathways, three perspectives, three transitions, three journeys, whatever you want to call it. But for me, I kind of narrowed it down to these three: looking, leaning, and living. Yes, it's alliteration. They all start with L. It was just a thing. and uh, but but for me, that really helped me identify some of the places I was in as I was going through them. Um, because these three perspectives I've worked through multiple times in my life and will continue to, because it is not a linear thing. Life is not linear. There is no ultimate destination. There is no ultimate goal. We are all just kind of on a spiral, and sometimes we're up and sometimes we're down. Um, so, looking. So, these are the three I just kind of gave you some catchwords, give you a sense of what it means when I say talk about looking. So, there's three words that I kind of assign to what it is when you are in kind of a looking perspective. First of all, there's curiosity. So, curiosity always gives us a sense of openness and space. Okay. So, instead of kind of being judgmental for myself for maybe being late on a bill or getting in an argument with my kid or being controlling with my spouse, if I just look at it, am curious as to why that happened or what caused me to react or respond that way, if I'm curious, I can stay open. I can stay available. I can stay flexible. Because the moment I get rigid is when things can go south really quick in my own head and in my relationships. So, curiosity. Another facet of looking is self awareness. So, it's kind of a beginning when you know you're in the looking phase that you're beginning to become aware of yourself, of maybe how you respond to things, how you react. You're not ready to do anything with it yet. You're not ready to, go change your life or anything, or you're not ready to run off to Asia and be a monk, right? You're just becoming aware of yourself and how you are responding to certain situations. You also are aware that you might have needs, and that sometimes those needs could be really, really strong, and some of them could you feel guilty or shame about having needs. So those are kind of examples of self-awareness that comes with the looking phase. And observation. So observation is tied into really curiosity and self-awareness. So I kind of see it as why I have the glasses there. It's kind of, you put the glasses on because you want to see things a little bit clearer. Maybe you haven't been as self-aware of your needs or your challenges that you know that are kind of part of you. And you haven't been as aware of it, but now you went to the eye doctor and you get your eyes corrected, and maybe you go, instead of an eye doctor, you've gone to a therapist, or you're in a support group or a healing circle, or whatever it is, or you have a really good friend that you can be very vulnerable and transparent with, and curious with, and so you've kind of gotten your vision corrected, and you begin to get curious about your behavior and the patterns that you have, and you're self-aware, and you're beginning to see yourself more honestly, but it's still from an observation point of view. In other words, you're not quite vulnerable enough to just start ripping off everything, right? You're observing because it is a very fragile time. The looking phase is very, very fragile, and it can feel very insecure. It can actually be pretty painful, because when you correct your vision, even though you could see the beautiful trees and the beautiful leaves, you also can see all the ugly things too, right? You can see the dead leaves. You can see, the broken limbs. You can see things that are bad as well. So that's kind of just an overview of the looking. Now, leaning. So leaning, these are the three facets. A desire for more self-reflection. So in looking, you're self-aware and you're kind of intrigued with becoming more self-aware, and recognizing that, it might be helpful to understand why I respond or react this way in certain situations, or why I tend to be more controlling, or why I tend to withdraw, or why I want to fix or rescue, or why I want someone to come and rescue me. So it's a desire for more self-reflection. Also in the leaning phase, you're tending to look and study new material. You are beginning to get curious. Your curiosity has now just not been like, I wonder what that's about, but you're looking for resources and you're trying to find out information, or you're looking for people who have gone through it or experienced it. And then another facet is new practices. So maybe you have a friend who meditates and they share the Calm app with you, and you go, oh, awesome, this is great. So you try it on. Maybe it feels like a brand new jeans that you haven't been broken in yet, but it's a new practice, right? You're trying new things on. You're leaning into the discomfort because new practices are always going to be uncomfortable and they're always going to be vulnerable because anytime we're doing something new, we don't know how to do it, right? And so then our ego can make us feel very insecure, and it can feel uncomfortable. It can feel like a struggle. You'll want to quit about 12,000 times, all very normal in the leaning phase. Now, I want to remind you, this is not linear. So we all go through all of these phases all the time. And different teachers have different names for it, different labels. These are just the three that have helped me so that I can identify where I am in my spiral. So the leaning phase is those three kind of areas. This is a generality. Okay, then the third phase is living. So when I'm in the living phase, I have a daily ritual and daily practices that ground me, that are just part of my day. They're part of my being. They're part of my regular life, my very real life. So that is meditation, breath work, study, support and encouragement. So accountability and support are a big part of the living phase, is that you invite people in to hold you accountable to your commitment to either your daily rituals or practices. And your daily rituals and practices could be journaling. It could be reading the Bible. It could be reading any other spiritual book. It could be journaling more. It could be writing 200 words of the first page of your book. Whatever your daily practices or rituals are, and you've been leaning into it, but now you're living it. And in order to continue living it, the accountability and support is a must. It is very hard to live in this phase in isolation. Humans were not designed to be in isolation all the time. Some humans like to be isolated more than others. However, we still desire support and encouragement from other human beings. And the third facet is awareness that growth is a lifelong process. So part of living is recognizing this is going to be a forever thing. So I emphasize this is not linear. This is a spiral. And we all go through things all the time. All right, so I want to jump into just a short little teaching and then we'll wrap it up. So we have patterned ways of responding. And you begin to see this in the looking phase. So that's why I have the glasses there. We have patterned ways of responding. When we take a step back and look at ourselves with curiosity, we realize, wow, when things get hard, ouchy, difficult in our relationships or in workplace or with friends, we have a patterned way of how we respond to those situations. So if you see this line here, I'm going to use my cursor. If you see this line right here, this line represents what is really happening in any given situation. Okay, so I want you to think about that image as reality. Okay, so that's the line. And that line is kind of where we want to be. But because we're human, and because we have patterned ways of being, there are parts of things that we respond to in a very expected way. And so I want to talk about functioning. So in hard, ouchy, difficult situations, we may react two ways. This is a generality. You may be a mixture of both, but it seems like, and it tends to be, that we have two ways of responding. The first one is over functioning. Okay, so over functioning, and this is, I've adapted this from Brene Brown's teaching. I cannot emphasize enough to you how wonderful her work is and the ways that she provides tools for her learners. And I have been learning from Brene Brown for a very long time. But she is a classic overfunctioner, as I am myself. So we can overfunction. And I'll go more into what that is in just a bit. But the bottom line is overfunctioners we really just kind of turn on. It's like hitting the gas pedal. When things get stressful, hard, ouchy, we want to hit the gas pedal because we want to get in there as quickly as possible and fix it. So we are definitely going way faster than we need to at that moment. Okay. Then there is the under functioners. These folks tend to withdraw, they tend to hit the brake. They tend to hit the brakes, stop the car, get out, and go somewhere else. They don't want to be in the car where there is ouchy, difficult, or hard. Okay, so those are kind of the two facets we're going to talk about today. So, over functioning. Action is the verb here. Give me something to do. So Brene Brown has a great story where she tells it on her podcast, unlocking unlocking the key or unlocking truth. I think it's unlocking truth. But she has a great story where she was in a situation that was very stressful and a family situation. And instead of just kind of sitting still and just being where she was, she immediately jumped into overfunctioning and she wanted to go and get a list together and go get all the things done. And how can I help you? And can I make you casseroles? And so doing is a big thing with overfunctioners. I do this as well. When things get stressful or hard or challenging, the first thing I want to do is jump in there and fix it. I want to control the situation. I am highly uncomfortable with the pain and the ouchiness and the difficulty, and so I just want to resolve it now. A lot of to-do lists, a lot of checklists, a lot of agency. Hey, can I handle that for you? Hey, I'll handle that too. Hey, I'll handle all 275 tasks. That's kind of overfunctioning because there's no way you can handle 257 tasks, much less the 25 that I already signed up for. But it's because I just am responding to this stressful situation by over functioning. I'm hitting the gas pedal. I've gone from 0 to 200 miles an hour. Because that is a comfortable place for me to be when I feel stressed and anxious. And again, this is looking with the glasses because it's just like, I do tend to do that. I'm aware of it and I'm observing it. Okay? Underfunctioning. So underfunctioning is withdrawal is the verb here, withdrawing. In other words, get me out of here. There's a strong desire for someone, something to save me, to rescue me. I am not an underfunctioner, but I do know people who in my life who I love who tend to withdraw when things get stressful, get quiet. They're like turtles. They kind of go in their little shell and they just stay there and hang out until the discomfort passes. They're not going to be talking a lot. They're not going to be trying to do anything. And sometimes they may even freeze. Okay? So that's underfunctioning. So for us overfunctioners, so we're in the microscope mode, right? So this is now, we've moved from looking into leaning. So when you lean into a situation, you think about, okay, I'm curious about overfunctioning. Okay? One of the ways that you can kind of lean into it more, maybe understand it more, is recall a recent situation when things got hard or ouchy. What was the first thing you felt in your body? Now, when I do this, and I have to go back to this phase all the time with regard to overfunctioning, I call it controlling or fixing. It's really overfunctioning is the kind of classic name. But the first thing I tend to feel in my body is tightness, like a spring. So I want you to visualize a spring that's just tightened and tightened and tightened, okay? And then when that sucker's let loose, where does it go? It's just, that's me. I feel very tight and I feel like I must act. Like everything in my body, every cell in my body is saying act, 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 go, do, okay? So that's kind of a point where you're like, what are the things that you're feeling in your body? Underfunctioning, the same thing. Recall a situation when things got hard or ouchy. The key word is hard, ouchy, difficult, challenging. So what was the first thing you felt in your body? I'm not an underfunctioner, but when you notice, maybe I feel nauseous, or maybe I feel like I want to run away. Anxious, nervous, hot. Temperature is a big part of our polyvagal system, which I talked about last week. So, what are you feeling in your body? Because when you're leaning in the leaning phase, you're really becoming more and more aware of yourself, of how your body responds. You're not staying as much in your head, you're going into your body. Okay? Excuse me, I have to get a tissue. My allergies have been really bad. So sorry about that. Okay, so under functioning. So we're still in the leaning kind of phase. And this is just an example of how I work with the looking, leaning, and living. So one of the questions that I ask myself in situations is I think about what it was like for my family and how did my family deal with hard, ouchy, difficult situations. So my family ignored them. In other words, they happened, but no one ever really talked about it. So, as a child, I had a lot to say. I had a lot of feelings. And when I went to go talk to my mother, for an example, my grandfather died when I was about 9 years old. And I think I've told this story before. So, it was a really bad situation. It was difficult, ouchy, highly emotional. I wanted to go express my feelings because I'm very verbal. And I went to my mother and I was upset and crying and trying to talk to her. And she did not want to talk about it. So in that moment, she was under functioning. She was kind of like, I need to get out of this. This is ouchy. This is hard. I want to go away. I don't want to deal with this situation. Well, I was over functioning because I'm looking for a response. I'm looking for support. I'm looking for encouragement in a place it wasn't there. And so I didn't get my needs met. So how did I react? Well, I withdrew myself and went and hid and kind of licked my wounds. But my childhood tended to look like I was an underfunctioner when in fact I was overfunctioning, but I was in my imagination and I was in my imagination making everything better. It looked like underfunctioning because I tended to be very quiet and withdrawn as a child. But what I was doing was my body was protecting me because I was in a family where everyone seemed to be overfunctioners, like very verbal and demonstrative. Yet when things got hard, ouchy, or difficult, it was avoided. So it was everyone went in their shells and it really wasn't spoken about. So that is one of the reasons why I go, that's what that was like. So in my current context, I have overcompensated for that in my own family with my own children and my spouse, including my ex-husband, because that was something that I didn't want to happen, but I overshot, right? Like I overcompensated. So that's kind of a way you can start looking at your family situation. And you're just getting curious, you're getting aware of it. What was your family like in those situations? How did you fit or function in your family? What was your role? Because when we start thinking about that, we all in dynamics, especially in family dynamics, we all play a part. Even though it looks like it's just a family dynamic, we all have a role we play. And one of the ways we can figure out whether we overfunction or underfunction is to look at our family and how we fit or functioned in that family. So I was the baby in my family. I was perceived as being very spoiled when in fact I was just feeling very isolated and lonely a lot of the time. I was a very expressive, emotional, sensitive child, and I really needed an outlet to get that out, and I could not feel like I could talk about the things that were upsetting me. So I pretended to be something else, which is kind of like overfunctioning, okay? Golly, my nose is running. Sorry. right, so now we're in the living phase. So, in the living phase, this is just kind of how I want to move back into the line of real life. Now, remember that little line, this little line here, this little line right there. So, that's just kind of my way is I want to get back in line. I want to be back into my real life. I want to be present in my life. I want to be right now. I don't want to be in my head. I don't want to be thinking about the future that I can't control and the past that I'm ashamed of. So I want to be as in line as possible. So the ways that as an overfunctioner, I can move back into the line of real life is number one, I need to own that I want to fix things. In a bad, ouchy, hard situation, I need to just own it. I need to own that I really want to fix that situation. And I want it to be better now. I do not want to wait. I do not want to sit through this difficult emotion. I want to talk about it and get past it. Okay? And I just need to own it. Number two, I need to get still. Now, you will hate this if you're an overfunctioner, and it will feel awful. Getting still is the opposite of what an overfunctioner does. So Brene's story is she was overfunctioning. She was putting lists together, and her sisters kind of called her on it and said, Brene, you're overfunctioning. And so she just kind of fell apart and sat down and was sobbing. And that's what happens. See, overfunctioning is just armor. Underfunctioning is armor. We're protecting ourselves from the pain and difficulty. And the key is getting aware and getting accepting and owning where we are and getting still. So for overfunctioning is getting still is a big part of getting back into the line of real life. Be vulnerable. Let others help. So this is a big one because overfunctioners, we want to save everybody. And we feel really purposeful and good when we're saving everybody. So we don't want anybody to help us because God forbid we have needs. So being vulnerable is one of the ways where I can ask for help. I can ask for what I need. That is a way that I can move back into the line of real life. I can get back into the flow of my life. Underfunctioning. So the ways for underfunctioners to move back into the line of real life is own that you want to shrink or run away or escape. Just own it. Number two, identify the strengths that you could bring. So underfunctioners tend to kind of go, I can't do this. This is overwhelming. It's very common to go into victim mode, although victim mode is just as possible with overfunctioners as well. I've did it for a lot of years of my life. But it's overwhelm is a big part of underfunctioning and freezing. So it's one of the ways that you can start looking even at the polyvagal theory to see how that works with regard to the nervous system and why freezing happens. It's a biological, neurological event. It doesn't mean you are broken or bad or something's wrong with you. It is just your body's way of helping you survive because that's what the body has learned, and the body always wants to help you. For underfunctioners, identifying the strengths you can bring. In other words, in freeze or overwhelm, you can self-identify, wow, I'm really good at organizing things. So I can at least step up to organize the lunch for my uncle who just lost my aunt in an unexpected death. And it's a really uncomfortable situation, but I'm really good at organizing things. So that's something I could do. So you could show up in that moment, even though everything in you says you want to run away and not even show up to the lunch, you can at least help with the strengths that you already have. Does that make sense? Stay present in the situation, offer ways you can show up. So that's a way to really kind of move back into living real life, not underfunctioning and not overfunctioning. So this is awareness in action. So this is recognizing and seeing and the looking and the leaning and the living, awareness and action, because when we see ourselves clearly, we can try new things. So when we put on the glasses, we correct our vision, we're aware of it, we're curious, and then we maybe perhaps want to get more aware. We're studying new materials. We're trying on new practices. We're trying on new ways of responding. It's uncomfortable. But when we see ourselves clearly, we can be motivated to try new things. And I want to emphasize this so much. We are human. And I and you, we all move in and out of all these phases all the time. So be kind to yourself, okay? And trust the process. Um, I have used these 3 phases for myself for years now, and I've gone in and out of each one of those phases many, many different times in many different places of my life. And it's just my categories that help me, so I thought I'd share them with you. So I really appreciate you listening. You can find me on 2 social media platforms, Facebook, Writing Real Life, and Instagram, Real Life by Heather. And so I hope that was helpful. I want to be more intentional with providing content every month, and I'm going to be cross-posting it on my page as well. Please do invite your friends to come and join and listen to the lives. Invite them to the group, Real Life, Getting Real Together. I hope to see you soon. I hope you have comments. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I hope you have a great day. I hope this content was helpful. Please let me know if there's anything you'd like to hear about or you'd like to talk about. But next week, we're going to talk more about using these phases in kind of in the practices. What are some practices we can maybe try on? Some things that we could do as we lean into some of these areas with growth mindsets, and where you are with underfunctioning or overfunctioning, and all of those awarenesses that we have. So I will post something probably on Wednesday, kind of remind you of this content and give you, I'll also post this presentation so you can look at it again. If you have any questions, feel free to DM me on Facebook or Instagram. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you soon.